Hello, I'm Huffaker, and you're watching Collision Path. Today we'll be covering the Tokugawa Shogunate, a Japanese empire that ranged from 1603 to 1867. It had many unique power structures built upon strong economic, social, and political systems. Now to the information blurbs. The sources of power are closely tied to the story of Ieyasu Tokugawa.
Before 1603, Japan was full of foreign kingdoms and domains with a weak emperor. Ieyasu Tokugawa, the daimyo of one of these domains, wanted unity and fought wars throughout Japan, eventually uniting Japan under the shogun. The domains remained with daimyos having power, but over time the shoguns took more and more power from the daimyos and the country as a whole.
Ieyasu Tokugawa and the future shoguns also created an interesting political structure.
The Japanese political structure featured a weak central government. Although the emperor was technically the head, the shogun, who was elected by the emperor, had way more control over the country. Another defining feature of the politics is the 232 domains run by daimyos. These domains have certain independence within their own government and army, but the shogun generally added more and more laws that would add to the shogun's power and take away from the daimyos.
Behind every political structure, there's usually a well-established social structure, and Japan was no exception.
The Tokugawa Shogunate had many different social classes. Although the emperor was highest, it didn't have much power and it only appointed the shogun. The shogun is the top leader and is in charge of military. Below shogun was the daimyo, or military lords. Each province had their own daimyo. After military lords were the samurai, which were soldiers during the war. Next were peasants, which were the main source of rice and other goods. There are also artisans that sold what couldn't be farmed. Lastly was the merchants, who traded goods with other merchants.
In order to keep these political and social structures afloat, Tokugawa period Japan also had a strong economic system.
The Tokugawa's primary economic system was agriculture. The wages for the samurai were based on agricultural yields. Slowly, over time, the economy shifted away from an agrarian economy and focused more heavily on industry and manufactured goods like silk, cotton, fabrics, paper, porcelain, and steak brewing.
Given the shogunate's impressive economic, social, and political systems, it assuredly had imperial ambitions.
The Tokugawa Shogunate Empire only expanded within Japan. Their motivations to expand began with the desire to have peace in the countryside, therefore their agriculture improved. With the improvement of agriculture, there were new seeds, tools, and uses of fertilizer, ultimately leading to a greater output of crops, so food surpluses were created which supported rapid population growth. With the increase in population, more buildings and towns were created, making Edo a booming city.
While the shogunate did unify Japan, and was known for internal peace, it was not without its rivalries.
But Ieyasu noticed Hideyoshi was gaining more warriors, which made them appear as a threat. Ieyasu felt he could successfully destroy his rival, which is exactly what he ended up doing since he took all the daimyo away from Hideyoshi. The empire also banned Christians, and if any of them were to step foot on Japanese territory, they would be killed since the Tokugawa weren't open to foreigners and saw Christians as a threat to stability.
On the shogunate that fell apart in the 1860s, and finally collapsed in 1867. Because of its nature as a military dictatorship, various peasant uprisings were bound to occur. But unfortunately for the Tokugawa leadership, the samurai turned against them. As we saw in the blurbs, samurai wages were closely tied with agricultural yields. As agriculture became less and less important to the Japanese economy, samurai compensation slowly decreased. This eventually caused them to turn against the shogunate. Combining this with increased fear of Western influence and general social unrest, the collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate was inevitable. The legacy left behind was generally good. They created over 200 years of internal peace and growth. Strong political stability, coupled with greatly improved educational system, created their economic development. During this period, schooling systems for everyday citizens were established. Japanese citizens were taught ancient Japanese pottery and history. Additionally, despite many attempts to shield Japanese culture from Western influence, the schools taught the Western sciences. They called it Rengaku. The innovation of polychrome woodblock print also assisted in providing literature and education to everyday folk. The increased focus on learning and literature was largely pushed by a strong belief in Neo-Confucianism. Perhaps the most well-known innovation from this time period are the haiku poems. Although the shogunate also had its drawbacks, it was incredibly isolationist, made attempts to cut off all outside influence, which may be a positive or a negative aspect. Although they took parts of this isolation too far, Christians were banned from the country, and they were killed if discovered. So, was Tokugawa shogunate a good thing or a bad thing? It isn't obvious. Depends on whether you think protecting your culture and shielding your people from outside influence is a good thing. Is political unity and internal peace worth living in a military dictatorship? What are you willing to sacrifice for increased access to literature and education? These questions don't have simple answers. Just like most events in history, the shogunate had its own pros and cons. Thank you for watching this installment of Collision Path.